Welcome to my show, simply entitled Women Influencers, where you will find inspirational stories of successful women in business. I am Veronica Malala, CCIM, founder and CEO of the Capstrata Group of companies, providing commercial real estate development, brokerage, and property management services in the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is Jamie H. Kim, CCIM, founder of Phronesis Group in California. Her story of overcoming near death due to unexpected kidney failure is surely one not to miss. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I'll welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast. Hi, Jamie. How are you today?
Hi, Veronica. Great. I'm excited to do this interview with you and glad to be here.
I appreciate that so much. You're out in California, 3 hours behind me. I'm in Florida, so let's just jump right in if you don't mind. So, Jamie, tell us about your story, how you grew up in your environment, and how you got to where you are today.
Great. Well, Veronica, I grew up in West LA in Southern California, and I was what you would call a latchkey kid. Back then in the 80s, both my parents were working and working full-time plus. So we had very little adult supervision. We'd come home from school with a key around our neck, let ourselves into the apartment, make our after-school snacks, do all of our homework. And then when it was around 5, 6 o'clock, we'd start prepping dinner, before my parents got there, like do the basic things, make rice.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in a working class family. I know the meaning of hard work. I've been working since I was 10 years old,
Wow.
either working for my mom in her business or having part-time jobs, So in the 80s, I actually have a funny job that I had. I used to pump lemonade at Hot Dog on a Stick.
No.
Yeah, I used to do the corn dogs, all that stuff. And so my work ethic was developed at a very early age. And one of the things that it taught me was how to show up on time, how to follow instructions, and how to anticipate what needs to get done next.
Oh, all the basic things that everybody should know.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised, right? Because a lot of our youth right now don't really get the opportunity to learn all that.
Right. And so I was balancing school while having a part-time job. And I don't know, it was fun. Making money was fun. Serving customers was fun. Learning business was fun. And so in that kind of microcosm of limited adult supervision from my parents because they were working, I'm what you call a self-starter. If I see a situation and something needs to get done, I just jump right in, roll up my sleeves. So I've never been one to sit in an ivory tower, no matter how high I've gone in my accounting career, anything like that. I have just always, if it needs to get done or somebody needs help, I just do it.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. So, did you work all the way through college? And tell us a little bit about that.
So college, I did something unusual. NYU came to Southern California to Century City with a 10-minute video about the school. I just thought it would be so great to, go study business with international students. So I watched that video, I applied, and somehow I ended up at the Stern School of Business.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I'd never been to New York. I didn't have any friends. I had no relatives. And again, it was just the self-starter in me. I just thought that's where I needed to be. And it was probably one of the best decisions of my life because from there, I graduated early in 3.5 years and I was a mid-year hire at Arthur Andersen. It was a public accounting firm. We used to audit Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. And there, seriously, was like my business boot camp. The work ethic in New York is unparalleled.
Mm-hmm.
If you make 3 mistakes, 3 strikes, you're out. I mean, they do not tolerate nonsense. Like there's so much nonsense that goes on in California, that's like acceptable behavior. You got to really be touchy and feely with your employees. Not in New York. They're very straightforward. So it was my business boot camp. I learned my follow-up skills. I learned detail orientedness, how to keep records, and how to document my work so that somebody could step in after me and figure out where I was.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever shared with you that I lived in New York City, in Manhattan, actually, for 8.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I was auditing companies like Merck. I
Mm.
was doing pension audits, which are quite difficult. And
Oh,
so I think I was only 21 and I caught a controller paying himself bonuses, including with the IT guy, and stealing money from the corporate entity. And this was as a
Oh,
budding 21-year-old. So because of that, that led me to other jobs where I was really good at matching the beginning story to what was being documented in a contract to the end of the story. Like everything had
wow.
to line up. I'm not a suspicious person, but I just have really good RAM. And so things register when people tell me a story, and numbers don't lie, but people do.
That's right. I would agree. Numbers don't lie for
Yeah.
sure. So after that career, how did you transition into commercial real estate? Did you move back to California?
Yeah, I did. I was having a quarter life crisis in New York. While I was at Arthur Andersen, I just said, accounting's not for me. It's not creative enough. I wanted to use my knowledge of numbers to make decisions. So I was more an operational kind of person.
Mm.
So I just said, I'm going to drive cross country, go back to California and figure things out. And while I was in California, I had a few different jobs. Nothing really held my attention except my one stint at an X-ray bomb detection facility. We manufactured X-ray scanners, customized vans for the government of Israel, US government, Korean Incheon Airport. And so that was a really wild experience. I got a lot of experience. I learned how to cold call, to be persistent, and to take on projects where I had no idea where the outcome would lead me, but it always led me to a positive outcome. And it ingrained in me a can-do attitude and persistence.
Mm. So very interesting. X-ray, what is it? Bomb?
X-ray bomb detection.
Oh, talk about just a variety of experience. That's pretty awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about how you transitioned into commercial real estate,
Yeah.
because that's how we know each other is because of the CCIM, which to my audience, I've mentioned this a lot before. CCIM is actually a commercial real estate designation that is global, and we are a network of commercial real estate experts. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So I was actually working in like a private lending company in Santa Monica. I'd had a major car accident, one of several that were never my fault. But anyway, someone suggested that I enter real estate, that would give me a flexible schedule. And at the time, I didn't have any family members, no connections to real estate, and I had to kind of cold call again to different brokers at CBRE, Cushman Wakefield. Someone gave me a shot, and then I entered CB Richard Ellis and kind of was self-taught over several years. Then had a career at Cushman Wakefield, and then in 2009 started my own brand. And it's basically a boutique firm. I specialize in helping clients, occupiers of space, support their goals through real estate. And then
Wow.
they become investors. I help them with those decisions. And so I like to give people an advantage in the negotiations. I do a lot of due diligence and I make great effort to make sure that they have the best possible outcome.
That's pretty amazing how you started your business in 2009, just after, well, 2008 was, of course, GFC, global
Yeah.
financial crisis. And tell us a little bit about that journey and that decision point where you pivoted and just created your own business.
Well, one of the things about the big brokerage houses and commercial real estate, if you're not on a big team and you're a solo broker, they really don't support you and pay
Mm.
any attention. So I had to learn to do my own documents, my own marketing brochures. And so I thought to myself, why am I paying them half of my commissions and getting no support? I was my own admin. I was my own kind of like market research person. I was
Sure.
also the negotiator. I was foot canvassing. I was doing everything. It was like a one-woman shop, but that's how I learned. And I think the mix of my client type has led me in the path towards development because I always dealt with entrepreneurs. And so I would say commercial real estate is the most satisfying if you're into solving problems, other people's problems.
Yeah, and of course, if you have a good proficiency with math and analytics, I think, that's a good fit for someone who wants to do commercial real estate, like you and me, of course.
Yeah.
But But tell me a little bit about a life journey or something that happened in your life. And I know you actually wanted to mention maybe a health crisis that
Mhm.
happened to you.
Well, in 2021, I thought I had food poisoning. And
Mm,
so I was staying at home. I had symptoms, this and that. And to my surprise, my boyfriend at the time said that, hey, I think we need to take you to the ER. And I fought
mm,
him. I was like, no one shot me, no one stabbed me. I don't need to go to the ER. It was my cultural training, never going to the doctor, never going to the ER. We just power through pain. And so I ended up at the ER. He just dragged me there. And they said I was 2 days away from dying in my sleep, that my
oh,
kidneys were failing. They were at 5% function. Both kidneys were doubled in size from infection. I had
oh,
sepsis. I had a fever as well. And they're like, didn't you feel any pain? And I said, well, I have a high tolerance for pain. I grew up that way. You just go to school no matter how you're feeling, and just power through it. And so they said that was my downfall, and they
mhm,
said if I didn't go to the ER that day, in 2 days, I would have died in my sleep. So the journey was kind of crazy. I couldn't believe I was that sick and that it was that serious. Um, and so I was hospitalized 3 times over the course of like 21 days. Um,
wow.
and this is someone that's never been to the hospital. But thank God I had insurance, right, for such an
Yeah.
event as this. And I was on dialysis for 3.5 months, and that's in the clavicle, in the neck, the emergency
Oh,
kind of dialysis. And usually it's a downward progression where they have to rip out your kidneys and all that stuff. But somehow I received a miracle from God and I was able to get restored to the point where they were able to release me. At my worst point, I had exterior, I don't know what they're called, but they're attached to your kidneys and they collect urine on the outside of your body. I mean, I was a hot mess. But to
mm,
come back from all that, my biggest lesson learned is you need to recalibrate your life.
mm,
The work, I didn't know it at the time, but working hard, my work ethic was my downfall. I didn't
mm,
eat properly. I would work 20 hours straight in one day if something had to get done. I didn't, like I said, I did not have a regular eating schedule. I was subsisting on granola bars, monster drinks, and coffee and chips. And I thought that was the way to work hard and all this stuff. But when I got to the hospital, they were like, you need to be eating like 3 square meals a day with snacks in between. I said, I haven't eaten like that since sixth grade, since my mom stopped
mm,
cooking for me. And so I had to relearn a lot of basic things where had just gone by the wayside because I was so focused on work. So the new recalibrated me takes the time and lets people know, hey, I can't get this to you tonight. I will get it done on such and such time. And so I kind of modulate myself. And so that it's more manageable than doing the extreme, like working crazy hard and then having to like decompress.
mm.
So my work schedule was like this, it was spiking up and down. Now it's like
Uh-huh.
we're even.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I mean, obviously, that was a challenge that is not very common with a lot of career people, right?
Mhm.
Because your kidneys failed. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen to a lot of people who are pursuing a career or work so hard. And the way that you overcame that was really just a pivot, right?
Yeah, I really had to retrain my doctors. Here's what happens in the hospital because of liability issues. They
Mm,
don't want to generate false hope in you. So they have to tell
mm,
you the worst case scenario. And I would beg my doctors, I was like, don't you have a case study on somebody that's had a complete turnaround, a victory testimony? And they said, no. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be your first one, right?
oh, love
Yeah,
it.
and then every time they talked about my kidneys and they're like, it looks so bad, no one's ever come back from like kidneys that have blown up to the size that you are. The numbers are horrible. I would say, can you stop talking trash about my kidneys? They can hear you,
Mhm,
you know?
mhm,
Every time they mentioned dialysis, I said, please call it temporary dialysis because I am not going to be on dialysis for long. And I had to retrain their language. And while I was at the hospital, I had to visualize myself getting well. If they told me to walk the hospital floor once a day, I did it 7 times with the IV and everything. So I pushed myself through positivity. I really had to take inventory of my heart, my life, to see if there was anything that was holding back the healing. And I had to reconcile myself to God and just lean on him, and he is the healer and he is the miracle giver. And I just feel like I'm a walking miracle because of that.
Oh, no, I totally agree. And you know my story, right? My daughter who had stage 4 brain cancer and was healed by God. I mean, certainly he is the healer, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
that is amazing, Jamie, how you've taken that challenge, right, which is more than what anybody could bear, and you just turn it around to the point where you didn't even need a kidney transplant.
Yeah, I avoided all that. And there was actually an incident in the hospital where my hemoglobin was so low that they were trying to give me a blood transfusion. But at the time, it was the time of COVID, and I really didn't want somebody else's DNA like running through my body.
Mm.
So I told the doctor, can we do another blood test in the afternoon? So me and the phlebotomist, she was of a different faith, but I didn't care. I said, can you just say amen after I say my prayers? So I
Yeah.
speak to my own hemoglobin. I would tell it to rise up like a mountain. And let's say the cutoff was 700. It would just be 701, 703, and I would avoid that blood transfusion, right? And so we did it 3 times, and the doctor just kept shaking his head. He's like, are you going to keep doing this? And I said, yes, I am.
That is amazing. Totally amazing
Yeah.
how you can will something and pray something into
Into existence.
yeah, and a positive result. I love that. I love that so much. So let's talk a little bit about influence.
Mhm.
If there was one outcome you're most proud of that you had an impact on, what would that be?
Well, I'd have to say it was saving my brother's life. It was in being a source of intervention for his suicide attempt in
Oh.
2014. Yeah, I was buying him organic food and I happened to come back early. It was a whole scene. My mom was like out of her mind. She could barely get the words out of what he had done. And then I had a hard time dialing 911, but I had to pull myself together. And when I heard the ambulance, they went to the wrong house. It was
Hmm.
down the block. And so I had to convince them that you're at the wrong house. So I had to run down there and like get them to come to our house and save his life. And we're able to intervene. Thank God he chose the wrong vein. So
Hmm.
the doctors at Cedar Sinai was great. And it was a whole journey getting him back from being depressed and having no hope to giving him hope. So I think that's my biggest accomplishment in my life. Um, so I think after that, it recalibrates your mind. Like to
Hmm.
go through a life and death experience like that, there's no problem, there's no challenge, there's no obstacle, no misunderstanding that comes close to that.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And thank you for sharing. I hope
Yeah.
your brother is doing well.
Yeah, he's doing well. He's taking care of my parents and he has made a long journey forward. So we're glad that he's around, and I was glad to have some kind of impact in stopping that from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jamie, let me ask you, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to our audience today, what would that be?
I would say, keep it simple and take on burdens that are your assignment.
Mm.
I have struggled with anxiety most of my life, like worry and fear and taking on too much burden. And I feel like I could have done more, and maybe I wouldn't have. I found out recently that kidneys hold anxiety and fear
Mm.
in Chinese medicine. And so I think some of my health issues are tied to the emotional dysregulation. So
Mm.
if I could give advice to young professionals or people, even more further down in their career, is like, hey, not every problem, not every client is yours to handle. Do what
Mhm.
you can. And if you've done your best, that's it, hands off. And
Yeah,
that's really casting your cares to the Lord and giving it to him and trusting that the outcome will be good and that things will work out for the better.
yeah, absolutely. They say that if we try to hold water in the palm of our hands with just an open hand, the water is actually just stays within the palm of your hand. But if you try to close it and clench it, you lose the water, right? So it's a matter of being open, right? And letting God or opportunity actually just take control rather than you take control. So thank you. That's really great advice. So Jamie, we've come to the part of the interview where you get to ask me a question. So please go ahead.
What do you think is the most underrated trait of truly influential women in leadership today?
So thank you for that question. I think that the answer to that would be EQ or emotional intelligence. And I think that's more natural to women than it is to men, although I've met a lot of men who have very high EQ.
Mhm.
I believe that the maternal instincts of women in general play well with understanding other people, listening. Although you will agree with me that there are women who are cold and
Mhm.
who don't have that much of inner connection to their femininity that way or their
Yeah.
soft skills. But soft skills can be learned even for people who feel detached emotionally. Because at the end of the day, I think the most influential women really know and understand the value of appreciating other people, of
Mhm.
listening to other people, and being able to really just build community that way.
Yeah.
And the connection on an emotional level is so important, especially in business, and of
Mhm.
course, most especially with personal relationships. But the truth is, we have come to a generation, or at least because of COVID, where we think that we can create relationships or be a leader behind a laptop.
Mhm.
That's very difficult to do, right?
Right.
So people are humans. We are all humans, and we all need to really be heard.
Mhm.
We need to feel accepted. We need to feel valued. And I think that women leaders who have very high EQ, which is more natural to women than it is to men,
Mhm.
I believe, really have an advantage in the world. So thank you for that question. I hope that I answer that to your satisfaction. But I wanted to ask you if you had any parting words for our audience today, Jamie.
I think the my main message for today to anyone out there listening is there is no problem that cannot be overcome. There is a path to a solution and a positive outcome and a positive resolution. And one of my key strengths is resourcefulness.
Mm.
I may not have the answer, but I can surely find out someone that does have the answer. And you'd be surprised. The world is so kind and open to helping.
Yes.
You know, you would think that maybe you might face a wall or something like that, but people are willing to share their wisdom and knowledge. And one little thing can set off an opening of new doors, multiple doors to get
Mhm.
to that final result. So I just want to encourage people, whatever state they're in, whatever circumstance they're in, that things do get better and that you can overcome these challenges. Nothing is permanent, everything is temporary, and everything can turn for the better.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Such wise words. I think we can connect, or if somebody in the audience wanted to connect with you, they can find you on LinkedIn. Was there a website that you wanted to share?
Yeah, they can always just search for my name, Jamie H. Kim, comma CCIM. All my contact information is there. My website is the Phronesis Group. My resume and contact information is there as well. Emails are best.
Yes. Well, we're going to share all that at the bottom of the post when we drop your episode. So I want to thank you, Jamie, for being here today and for being so open and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I think that says a lot about who you are. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you real soon here.
Thank you, Veronica. This has been such a pleasure, and I hope our conversation triggers more conversations in other people's courts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Veronica.